Let's bring my good friend in, Dr. Joe Congini, Akron Children's Hospital, with us this morning, talking a little sports medicine. Joe's a little bit early with me this morning because we have Mr. Dolan coming up at 8:40 with our live sit-down conversation. Joe, what do you have for us today?
Is it okay if I call it a smorgasbord of sports? This is the time of year. There's so many things going on. It's really exciting, especially with what we went through last year. Sports fans are just beside themselves. There's so many things to keep an eye on. And the weather in March, so beautiful for our part of the country. So for our high school kids to get started was great. Basketball winding down. This weekend we'll have the end of March Madness, and the high school basketball ended in the last few weeks. And in Cleveland, there will be all kinds of talk in April about the draft. Amazing. The draft, the NFL draft will be in Cleveland, Ohio, so that will be pretty amazing. But the sport that's really the telltale sign of spring is the start of baseball. And after missing a year of baseball, the kids got out there this week. The weather cooperated beautifully. The high school kids, the younger kids getting started playing baseball, and it really has the feel of spring out there several days this week. And, of course, then to cap it off tomorrow, Major League Baseball. So get some good questions in there about our favorite Wahoo's Major League team as to what direction they're going. But Major League Baseball getting going has us all really excited for spring. And I wanted to talk just one thing again because I work with kids about an injury that I see very frequently in young throwers, young baseball players. And we haven't talked about it in a little while. And it's unique to young throwers, and it's called Little League shoulder. And it occurs in throwing. There's throwing problems at all levels of baseball, but particularly this is a unique injury to young athletes because they're still growing, and these are growth plates that are in the shoulder, right around the ball and socket joint of the shoulder. And when kids start to throw too much, they start to get into stress injuries and stress fractures of this growth plate in the shoulder. They can barely lift the shoulder. They have pain. They have weakness. Don't make them throw when they have been throwing too much. So I have a couple of take-home points about that. First of all, this is a little bit of a unique thing, Ray, is that it is not the rotator cuff. Adults get rotator cuff problems. This is not a glenoid labrum tear. Kids 8 to 14 do not, thankfully, tear their labrum like we hear about in other athletes. This is an injury that shows up on just a plain X-ray most of the time. We don't need a fancy MRI to diagnose little league shoulder. But when we get this X-ray, Ray, in kids that have been throwing a lot, particularly pitchers and catchers, but particularly pitchers, is you will see this stress fracture, fraying, fragmenting of the growth plate. Sometimes we'll get the X-ray of the other shoulder just to prove how much, to see how bad the injury is. But these kids have this injury and pain in the shoulder every time they try to throw. And so getting to the treatment part of it, guess what's at the top of the list? We have to get them out of throwing. And we have a shortened season, so people always, hey, how long are we going to be out, a day or 2 days? No, this takes about 6 weeks, over a month of rest from throwing to get better. And I feel bad about that because we have a shortened season. And I feel bad about that because pitchers only get so much of a chance, in our season, in our part of the country to pitch. But at this period of time, we need at least 4 to 6 weeks. And you can see when the strength comes back and you can see when the pain goes away. We can start them back to doing some throwing. And I can also see on the flip side when people keep bringing them back to pitching, playing and pitching on more than one team, that growth plate gets beat up like crazy. You see this fraying and fragmenting, and it worsens. You can't let them just continue to throw through this. They have to get that rest period, number one. Number two, they have to strengthen the shoulder girdle. The muscles around the scapula and the back of the shoulder stabilize the shoulder, just like in rotator cuff injuries in the older kids. For the growth plate, strengthening those muscles in the back of the shoulder is really good. And here's the good news for the kids, is I'll tell them, hey, do you want to throw the ball 5 miles an hour faster, 8 miles an hour? Do you want to control the ball and have command of your pitches more? Get in the weight, get into the physical therapy center and work on strength of those shoulder girdle muscles, and you'll be throwing better. And number three, Pitching particularly is a very mechanical thing, and you really need to learn proper mechanics. And many of our young pitchers do not have good mechanics, and we need to find the person who is best in your community or your area to teach mechanics of pitching. If it's really a kid that's pretty serious, when they go back after they've had a bad bout of Little League shoulder, to throwing with proper mechanics, throwing with proper strength, enough rest, and they'll get back. Otherwise, some kids never recover from this, and they never pitch again, and it's a shame. So this problem called Little League shoulder is a problem that we have to try to eliminate and prevent. But it is not going to take away from the enjoyment that I see on kids' faces as after last year they go back out on the field. We have beautiful days like the last few days, and kids are getting to play that great springtime sport of baseball again.
I agree. Great stuff this morning, Joe. Thank you, my friend. And as you mentioned, we'll be talking baseball with Mr. Dolan coming up in 10 minutes or so. Thanks for joining us again. We'll reconvene next week.
Have a great interview, Ray. Have a great week, okay?
You too, my friend. Dr. Joe Congini, Sports Medicine Center, Akron Children's Hospital with us.